What's going on, boys? Long time no see. I figured I could do a second Road to 405 overhead press series for you guys because I was thinking about it. This is the kind of thing that I really like to watch on YouTube and I wish there was more of. So maybe I could be the person that provides that for you guys, right? Something you can watch while you eat your meals just to be thinking about your next session. Maybe you pick up some practical tips. Maybe your training goals are totally different from mine, but you gain some kind of motivation. I see you guys support it constantly in the comments. It's just hard for me to get through my thick skull that people actually like watching my shit and that by making a video, people would enjoy that. You guys are going to get tired of me yapping about this, but I got a really hard time getting it into my head that it matters to anyone in any tiny capacity. Eventually, you're just gonna be like, Sam, shut the fuck up and just post a video. But it's been a long time issue of mine that it just does not click for me. But I figure I can provide that for you guys. Right now, the way my split is set up, right, we have 2 upper days, 2 lower days that kind of get left alone. Run, block, 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 building up core strength metrics I find helpful for strongman. And then we have a 5th day that is like kind of a multi-purpose day. It can be whatever. It's like the Swiss Army knife of days. Sometimes it will be an event day for upcoming strongman events. Sometimes it will be an event day for week events. Even if I don't have a show coming up, if I know there's an event I'm bad at, I'll work on it year round. It can be like a miscellaneous day of body parts or muscles or movements that don't fit squarely into those 4 other training sessions, the uppers and the lowers. Or if I'm working on a specific lift, I'll just use it as an extra session for deadlift. I'll use it as an extra session for benches, an extra session for in this case, overhead presses. So right now, what we're using that kind of Swiss Army knife day for is basically just another overhead press session. Weights are adjusted, but I've got a session that I find roughly produces a well-rounded result in all of my overhead press muscularity. So I just do a second round of that type of, maybe I'll make some small adjustments in loading or exercise selection, but I run through that exact same template a second time each week to bolster my result. Right now we've got 2 overhead days, 1 push press day. This is the second of the 2 overhead days. We're gonna play it by ear. There's got some areas I'm pretty under recovered on, but we're gonna do our core overhead pressing and then play it by ear. Maybe we'll just run through more of that vanilla stuff a second time. Not every session needs to be different. It could be the same thing with just slightly less weight. It'll still produce a training effect. Or maybe we'll do some light bench presses for the first time in a while and do some horizontal pressing if that sounds fun, right? It's the one day I do get to have that kind of come in and really listen to how I feel and change the program a lot more, whereas some other things I leave set in stone. Something like my bench press, I've got a very good feel for how to produce a good like peaked result, so I leave myself a lot of wiggle room. I could probably peak my bench press very effectively with nothing written down, just coming in, remembering what I did last time and knowing how to pace it out to peak on a certain date. I don't trust myself. I shouldn't. I've proven to myself that I should not trust myself on the deadlift and that I was smarter when I was sitting down writing out the plan than I am in the heat of the moment. And so I should just stick to the plan. Overhead press falls somewhere in the middle. I get a little bit more of that training intuition allowance. I definitely expect when I'm working on my squat. It's gonna be a while before I have the level of training intuition on squat that I have on presses. So at first, we're gonna trust the plan we wrote down when we were sitting down more level-headed, but let's get into it. I already just finished up all my mobility, all my kind of movement prep mumbo jumbo that I always mention, constantly a moving target. Now let's get into overhead pressing. All right, so we're gonna do at least some of our work facing this way today because as some of you have pointed out, the bar is sloped on my overhead presses and I can't even feel it because I'm acclimated to it. You guys are like, is that a problem? That happens to me a little bit. In my case, it's because the floor in my garage is deliberately uneven to make sure the water drains away from the house. So I figure every now and then we'll slope in the opposite direction, make sure we keep things a little bit even, make sure we're not like overly accommodated to that, what is it, left to right slope that I'm used to. So one of the movements that I did while warming up was I stole from Brian Alsruh a long time ago. Just putting your ab exercises on your lower days, your oblique exercises on your upper days, just as a way to distribute them across the week. Not that it does anything magical. I do find that like doing a little bit of abs on the lower days helps with my brace, but it's a good way to split it across the week. And 2 exercises I come back to quite often are like Palloff presses, just to get in some anti-rotational work. Although in my current program, I think those are a little bit less important because I'm doing heavy single arm dumbbell rows, which is, there's a huge anti-rotational / slight rotational component to those, that's like a really, really, really heavy pal-off press. So I almost feel like that's a redundancy right now, but I don't mind it. It's just a box I kind of check a lot of the year. And then I also really like that I did today, side bends off the 45-degree back extension. Put the seat up high, hand behind the head, just really opening up. Ease into them. I tried to rig it for like a big stretch the first week and hadn't really taken my oblique and my QL through that big of a range of motion in a while. And I tweaked my QL a little bit. But then once I eased into them, for me, those are like a real good, there's always people that are real pedantic with the whole bulletproofing thing. There's no such thing as blah, blah, blah. I find it's good insurance in the bank for if we get a little bit off center, we have that little bit of strength in these laterally flexed positions. We build up thick, strong obliques, thick, strong QLs. I think it's good for your low back. Call me crazy. But those are one of my favorites. I think that like early in training, you could also do like isometric, anti-lateral flexion. Fancy way of saying just like side planks with a weight on the hip. And then if you kind of outgrow those, you can always move. Weight on the hip can get pretty brutal without that heavy of a dumbbell, or you can move to like a suitcase hold, a side rack hold, or a suitcase carry. All kind of anti-lateral flexion stuff, all also very good for this point, but this way we get a little bit more range of motion. I think those are very good. I think those are very solid, but then also doing something where we take that through a little bit of active range of motion, I think just goes a long way for keeping our midsection strong in a variety of planes, which a midsection that's strong in a variety of planes, I tend to think correlates with low back health pretty well. Don't know if I said it or not, but the other like kind of moving exercise like that is a windmill. Great to get in a little bit of extra overhead stability. Really good general exercise to help with circus dumbbell for the few of you that like strongman stuff. But the other one, obviously, the one you see most commonly is just like a side bend. You see the people do it with a weight in each hand. And it's like, well, one of those is kind of counterbalancing the other. That kind of ruins the exercise. But you can definitely outgrow those pretty quickly. You don't have to be the strongest guy around to get to the heaviest dumbbell at the average gym for your side bends. And I find that changing the resistance profile by doing it off of a GHD or doing it off of a 45-degree back extension takes that basic exercise and makes it so that way, ooh, it'll be a while before you outgrow the dumbbells on those, let me tell you. One of the things I did really well early in my lead training career was like seeking out information and not being like dogmatic with where I get that information from. I think I understood I've talked about this on my podcast. I know I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I started lifting. I was like 140 pounds at 5'10". And I understood the biggest difference. I didn't read any studies. I didn't know cross-sectional area, a big predictor of force output. I just knew that everybody stronger than me seemed to be bigger than me. I was like, well, I seem to be pretty strong for a 140-pound guy. If I got that big, I bet I'd be strong. It turns out I was right. And so I was like, okay, well, I should go consult the people that know the most about gaining muscle. And so I should learn from bodybuilders. I should learn about their nutrition strategies. I should learn about like what they think contributes to a good hypertrophy stimulus. That way, on top of my strength training, which is the thing that I really resonated with, I know how to effectively create like a background almost year-round growth stimulus, right? That way, I'm working on my arched bench press. I've got 30 minutes at the end of the workout. I want to be able to create an effective growth stimulus so that way over time, gradually my pecs are getting bigger and bigger to potentiate success with my actual bench training. So I consumed lots and lots of info there. Obviously, when I started lifting, I started out in powerlifting because that's what I found. I went to the gym because I was boxing and I wanted to go up a weight class. I wanted to get stronger. And I really like the numerical nature of it. And I'm a competitive person. So I was like, I want to be doing more on each exercise than everybody else's numbers wise. And then I was like, hey, there's a competition where we can compete with our numbers. And I was kind of drawn into powerlifting. Later, I found my way into strongman because I like the more varied idea of strength where it's one max or for reps or vertical plane, like a little bit more varied holistic test of strength rather than being supreme specialist. I think powerlifting is quite cool. I know some people think it's lame, but I think it's cool. I think what Max is doing is awesome. But I like the idea of that more like varied task of strength. But whatever, it all was just like finding things that resonated with what I thought was cool strength training. And as I got like further and further into that, I like learned from powerlifting resources, obviously, because that's what I was doing. But I also realized that I should pick up a lot from bodybuilders. I did a lot of calisthenics. I think that part of the reason my bench press blew up so quickly was because it was the only training I discovered basic calisthenics routines when I was like 10 or 11. as I was told to do it for boxing. And I was doing like the whole, like, I do this 1,000 push-ups every day, right? And it built a tremendous work capacity in my upper body that I think translated very quickly over to especially my bench press. So I like, okay, cool, I learned from that, you know. These are different people who have different spins on strength. They're not like, I always think it's like the real show of an intermediate guy, be like, powerlifters are the badass ones, bodybuilders are just weak pussies. And it's like, most of the people that hold that opinion, the bodybuilders are stronger than. Is there a drug part of that equation? For sure. It's just always a self-report when people are like, bodybuilders are weak. Most of the bodybuilders I know are pretty strong. You know, they're not the strongest people I know, but they're pretty fucking strong compared to the average person. And it's like, I respect whatever avenue resonated with you. If you're giving it a really good effort, I think that's cool, right? You don't have to be a big fat guy like me because you think a 405 overhead press is cool. I respect whatever lane of like physical training is what matters to me. What avenue it is, you know, it's like, oh, if I hurt my back and I could never deadlift again, fine. I'll like, if I can't lift, I'll just go back to boxing. I just like physical training. This is kind of the avenue I've been pushing down, and I've always kind of had some understanding of like, okay, well, we should learn from other resources, but you can take that too far. Like at one point I went way too far down the road of bodybuilding, and I know some powerlifters that are like this. That's all it is we'll have decent technique and then grow your primary movers. Well, there are guys who are beating you who don't have bigger primary movers. There's a little bit more to it than that. Like there is neural efficiency, there is big technical efficiency elements. There's more to it than just who's got the biggest primary movers. That's a big part of it, and that's why consuming that bodybuilding information is important. But I, as well as other people, have taken that a little bit too far. And it's like, I've definitely gone down like, okay, well, it's all about the nutrition. That's all I focused on for a while. And I think I came out of that a better lifter because of it. But one of the ways I've kind of tried to make sure I don't go too far down a like that rabbit hole is varying what lifting YouTube I watch to where I will try to watch like, I always find if you watch weightlifting content and you watch bodybuilding content, you'll probably end up being decent at powerlifting. You might miss out on some specifics like that as your base of like, okay, I've got this nutritional and growth idea from bodybuilding, and then I have this like technique and specificity of training and then periodization from weightlifting. You could get pretty fucking good at powerlifting without ever consuming powerlifting information. There are little technical things for bench press. Like, hey, it's a little known fact that this helps bench pressers with this technique. Hey, if you're a high arch soft toucher, do this, these frequencies. Like there are things you're gonna miss out on, but if those are the only two things you consume is just like weightlifting content and bodybuilding content, you're gonna turn out pretty well. And I've definitely had periods that bled into my training where I was just like on a big weightlifting content kick and it showed, or I was on a big bodybuilding content kick and it showed. So I try to keep it kind of diverse in what I'm consuming to make sure that I'm like factoring in all of those components of getting stronger at least somewhat equally. Nutrition's always every time I pay attention to my nutrition, it pays off. Like I've talked about how for Max, sleep is the most important variable. For some people, their sleep is always good enough. They always eat enough because they've got a big appetite. If their training intensity is on point, they get better. If their technique is on point, we all have a variable that's kind of our low hanging fruit. For me, it's nutrition. If I nail, like, cause my sleep's kind of shitty to begin with. If I nail my nutrition, it almost makes up for it a little bit. And that's kind of my make or break. So if I'm going to overinvest in something, it's going to be just watching day of eating videos. But I've been yapping for a while. Let's get into it. If my thoughts are even more scattered and less well organized than usual, you guys are going to have to forgive me. I had some NyQuil last night, and that leaves me with huge, I get a little bit better sleep. It's probably a net positive as long as I don't like over rely on it regularly. But oh my God, the brain fog for the next like 3/4 of the next day is nuts. It's not as bad. I actually get worse brain fog from like melatonin, even in very small doses. I wake up the next morning being like groggy and depressed. NyQuil treats me a little bit better, but whew, we cannot think straight. Thankfully, today is my day. I only have a half day of work, which is definitely making it a little bit easier on me to get out here and be ready to train. But whew, apologies for the rambling. God damn, there's the obvious statement, but god damn, there's a lot of trash on the internet. I woke up in a decent mood this morning, which usually Wednesdays are a little bit tougher day for me because it's the session weekly where I've got the most fatigue going on. And I think it's very easy to mistake that feeling of fatigue and the kind of the latent anxiety that comes with carrying that fatigue for like something being wrong mentally, right? When it's like you just need to tell yourself, no, I just feel fatigued, right? There's nothing to read into here. Nothing is wrong. I don't need to change anything. If I'm fatigued when I'm supposed to be fatigued, it's just something you have to learn to live with. And it's one of the many reasons why I always say that like trying to be less neurotic is a trait that most of my best athletes have, and it's something we should all be moving towards if we want to have good training outcomes. Because if you score high on neuroticism, you're going to overly read into that. Is this on? Okay, I think it's on. Overly read into those feelings that are just kind of, there's going to be periods where you go through those. But I was in like a surprisingly good mood. I moved my week around, trying to be like tactical with these things. So like, take note, if I'm unhappy with how I've executed every Friday, I should come up with a new plan for what a Friday looks like. I should have a checklist for what gets done to feel like I did a good Friday. Wednesdays was one of the days I was coming away from, habitually like dissatisfied. And I think that was just the accumulation of like, okay, well, this is when you have peak training fatigue and you're also working 7 days a week. So let's take a half day on Wednesday. And that worked quite well. I woke up in a good mood. I was like, hey, I got a half day. Maybe I'll actually have time to play some video games or something. Woke up in a good mood, was like prepping all my food, prepping my pre-workout, doing my morning stretches to get ready, started working on my half day of work. And then I was like, let's see if anybody's got some lifts on Instagram. And I don't have a big issue with it. I know some people do, but I got sucked into Instagram. I hate how they put suggested posts into your feed. I don't follow this person. I don't want to see this shit. God damn, there's a lot of trash out there. And I came away from my 15 minutes in time that I lost just in a worse mood. So, you gotta feed your brain is what you feed it. Try to feed it good stuff. I know that's a cliche, but the older I get, the more I realize cliches are a cliche for a reason, because they're probably largely true. And as much as we all roll our eyes that we've heard it a million times, should probably put a little bit more weight behind it. And it's like, been trying to make a little bit more of an effort to be particular with what I consume. Even if I think I can cerebral, Max is not here, he's the cerebral one. Even if I can like cognitively process my way through why I shouldn't let it matter, there's a subconscious like element to shit you see. Feed your subconscious good stuff, feed your stuff that motivates you, people you look up to and want to be like. Don't feed your subconscious garbage if you want to try to get better. Not that I'm some holier than thou figure, that I'm just telling you guys something I tell myself because I want to be very strong, and I'm trying to point the person that I am to be the kind of person that's going to achieve what I want to achieve. And that involves, hey, if you're going to passively consume media while you eat, passively consume, it doesn't have to be like the most mentally, it doesn't have to be educational videos, but something that you know has a good effect on you, not a bad effect on you. That was something that like I got on Kirsten about, like none of my business, but she always wants my help trying to get better and better as a lifter and as a coach. And I was like, look, watching like shitty drama content while you eat, not only does it not make you better in any capacity, but it probably bleeds into your subconscious on some level. If you just watched lifting videos of people you look up to, it doesn't have to be lifting, it could be any other avenue of life, that you could just like, hey, I never thought of that. Hey, I never thought of seasoning my meals that way. That's something I can take. I wasn't working, I wasn't trying to learn, I wasn't taking notes, but I gained something from that time. Oh. 3 reps. We're trying widening out the stance a tad today and see how that goes. Hey, we pulled the trigger. We bought the jerk blocks. Bank account obviously didn't like that, especially having to call the plumber and potentially repair a little bit of water damage. But we saved for long enough. Thank you to the Patreon boys. I appreciate you. Your monthly payments went directly towards my new jerk blocks, and it brings me kills me to spend money. Point in time when I was young, we didn't have much money. I got very used to it doesn't upset me at all. Honestly, if I had money, I wouldn't spend it. Like Kirsten can vouch, even when I do have money, it bothers me to spend it. I'm a hoarder when it comes to money. But it does bring me existential happiness when I feel like I've added something to my arsenal of the home gym that lets me do something well. Like sometimes you look at like a client's program, your form, be like, this is crispy. I'm doing this. And I'm not just doing this, I'm doing this well. And that's a good feeling. And like having efficient ways to like, okay, cool. I find a very efficient way to train my calves. Now we have the belt squat. I built myself like a proper calf block with gripping and like, okay, I don't feel like I'm leaving anything on the table with my calf training. I got a little tib machine. I don't feel like there's anything that's better out there. I don't think I'm losing anything. And I've got my belt squat. I've got like different stations. I like our squat stand set up with the boxes to spot. I feel like, okay, we've got a very efficient way to do it. There are hypothetical betters if we were rich, maybe, but I don't feel like in practical applications, it's like the whole optimal discussion. Is it actually any better? Not really. You know what I mean? Like if you try just as hard on this, it's probably immeasurable, these like hypothetical optimizations, but there are things that are worse. So feeling like I have the ability to do something that is like that 99% effective makes me very happy. And I think that being able to do overhead with leg drive with jerk blocks is a substantial improvement to the traditional kind of strongman training of doing it out of the rack, because I think you can accumulate more quality dip and drives if you're not catching your negatives. I think the catching the negatives, unless you're preparing for an event that's a press away, is fatigue, that doesn't drive necessarily the adaptations we're looking for. So I think I'll just be able to build more volume. I'm amped about it. I think it's a big step in the right direction. Not that equipment's the biggest reason you're not getting better, but when I make like things I feel are tangible upgrades, not just spending money to spend money, but something I feel is like, hey, I'm moving in the right direction, I can justify the money. Also, thank you boys for the comments and the likes recently. It makes me happy that you're enjoying them, but I also greatly appreciate the support. I know everybody says it, but the YouTube algorithm really likes comments. It likes likes, but it seems to really like comments. And I appreciate you guys all leaving like your engagement comments or leaving your thoughts on the video, things I could do better. I really like my community that I've built. I have to be careful because I spend too much time reading comments. Eventually it makes it outside my circle and I get a bunch of people like, dumb fucking juice head, baldy boy, what the fuck do you know, fat ass? I'm like, goddamn. I know I shouldn't care about the opinions of like random comments, but because I don't interact with many people, I'm just like, well, that's the only opinion I've heard of me today. Fuck. And the other day I saw one where someone was like, well, I think he's pretty cool. And I was like, that made my day. I was like, hell yeah, tell them. Don't like berate them. But I was like, someone defended me. That makes me happy. But yeah, I can't like spend too much time reading the comments. But I too try to like check them out for the first like hour or two. That's what Paris told me. Paris is like, usually the people that watch it the earliest are going to be by and large people that really like your stuff. So you have a low risk of just running into a bunch of people that it makes outside people just are being negative for the sake of being negative. So it's like checking it out. And I really like the community I bought. Generally pretty funny people, lots of interesting training insights, and it makes me happy to be like, just see a bunch of people be like, hey, I'm working on my first 100 kilo bench press. These videos are good motivation, and I've picked up some tips, and it's like, that's what I want out of this. That makes me very happy, because it was like, I had a bunch of channels like this that I watched coming up that I was just like, oh, I never thought of seasoning my food this way. I know I said that twice, but oh, I never thought of like, oh, this is like, the same tips for like losing weight are to avoid like, things to avoid to lose weight or to reverse those and they gain weight. Just so many things I came across that gave me motivation. It felt like I was walking this path alongside somebody. And it's like, I think it's a fucking cool path. It doesn't logically make sense. Like people are like, well, what's the point of getting strong? Nobody cares. It's like, well, I care. A couple of people on the internet care. It means a lot to me because it's a proving ground of my self-improvement, my ability to push myself, my ability to problem solve. I really give a shit. It doesn't matter that other people don't. And I think it's cool. I am still weirded out. Like, I feel like in human history, in the past, being like the strongest dude in your village was cool. Now it does not matter, which is fine. I'm not butthurt about that at all, but it is interesting that maybe that's an all-time low in terms of caring. But historically, that's a cool thing. I want to be the strongest guy around. And yeah, I'm willing to hunker down and spend a good portion of my day every day to be the strongest guy in town. I think that's cool. And I got a bunch of people I know that are walking a similar path. Like, I want to be the strongest guy in my gym. And so I think you can make it there. It's a slow endeavor, but it's not the highest standard unless you're at a brutally like strong gym. I think it's cool to see people that are walking that same path. Like, yeah, You know, it's not the most hardcore thing in the world, right? We're not going to war. But yeah, I wake up every morning and I eat a little bit more protein than I want to. And then I wait 3 hours and I eat a little bit more protein than I want to. And I train hard, I'm sore, and sometimes my joints hurt. But I think it's cool. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. And so having people that like you see that are walking that alongside you, that are like right behind you, people that are first starting that, people that are ahead of you, I think it's cool. You know, it's just like, that's the cool part about the internet, right? Is you get to condense that, where it's like, I live in Three Forks, Montana. There's 2,000 people here. I could drive over to Bozeman. There's a few more people here and say, okay, well, in real life, if we ignore my brother, I know maybe like 2 or 3 people near me that really give a shit about their strength training, maybe. And that's not to say we necessarily are gonna get along, right? But that I can find a whole host of people that have those same things from across the world and kind of interact with them, which I think is cool. I think it's a cool, I don't know. I think it's an underrated path to walk. Maybe you don't wanna get fat and like your constraints are like, I wanna be as strong as possible while staying within a smaller body fat percentage range than this guy. But I don't know, I think it's cool. Constraints are cool. I want to maintain a 6-minute mile and get as strong as I can. I think walking down that road to get like, oh, it'll get you hurt eventually. Yeah, most stuff that's hard gets you hurt eventually. Pushing your limits, there's an inherent risk there. And every now and then, while pushing to the maximum, you're going to overstep the maximum. You know, you rehab it, you come back, you keep pushing. I don't really see a problem with it. It's an underrated path, my fellow path walkers. With Spotify Wrapped coming out, if anybody is curious, here is mine. And then here is, hopefully you can read that, here is Kirsten's. The Evan Call one is the free run soundtrack. All right, camera is almost dead, so I will just show you guys this set and then just finish up my assistance work. Pretty basic stuff, just shoulder isos, tricep isos. I was gonna do a bit of back and biceps today, but biceps are a little bit hot from back squatting yesterday, so I figured it would be better to let those rest and recover a little bit quicker. So we'll do this last set on the bench. Not gonna push it to the limit because my pecs are a little under condition right now, so I'm probably pretty susceptible to a little pec strain, nothing bad, but won't push it to the limit. We'll just do a set here, maybe 5 reps if it's feeling good. And then we'll cook up the side rear delts, and then we will do some triceps. But you're gonna have to pencil that in with your imagination. Hope you guys liked the video. Hope the second road to 405, maybe I'll make this like for 5.5, whichever one we're on. We'll count this as a half one because I didn't film everything. But appreciate you boys as always.